Hi, I'm Musik and you're watching another episode of Artist Life. Have you ever contemplated of how the old master artists painted? What did they try to portray through their art? In this episode, I'll share with you some of my thoughts in regards to how they might have completed their painting. Today's episode revolves around Michelangelo Merisi, called Caravaggio, was probably born in Milan during the late summer or early autumn of 1571. His parents, Fermo Merisi and Lucia Aratori, had been married on January 14 of that year, and he was the first of their 4 children. For several generations, the Merisi family had lived in the small lumber town of Caravaggio. The artist adopted that town name as his own when he went to Rome. His father worked as a builder for the Marquess of Caravaggio until Caravaggio was 5. He lived with his family in Milan, where the Marquess maintained his principal residence. Michelangelo grew up in the town of Caravaggio. The family was neither poverty-stricken nor without some standing. His artistic education began in April 1584 when he was apprenticed to Simon Pedezzani, a competent Milanese painter who was moderately successful but so undistinguished that he would scarcely be remembered except for his pupil. Pedezzano signed himself as a follower of Titian, but his style was as much Lombard as Venetian. In 1585, he was in Rome, and his young apprentice might have accompanied him, although no trace of such a visit has been discovered. Apprenticeship to an artist followed a long-established tradition, and there is no reason to suppose that Caravaggio's was exceptional. He surely learned how to draw and to paint in oil and fresco. He would also have been taught anatomy and perspective, the representation of space, light and shadow, and color. Here you can see that I've custom made this canvas by using gallery stretch bars. The size of this canvas is 16 by 8 inches. The original painting that was done by Caravaggio of St. Thomas is 107 by 146 centimeters, or 42 1/8 and 57 and a half inches. Because I'm pressed for time, I've decided to only paint this portion of the painting right here. As you could see, I've went ahead and applied grids on it, and also the same amount of grids on the canvas. So just before I start, I want to show you this painting that I did many years ago when I first started painting. Is of Saint Thomas, Doubting Thomas, but back then I didn't really use his style. See, Caravaggio used a method called chiaroscuro, and that's where he used glazes and transparent colors on top of each other. And I pretty much just painted this the way I felt. And back then I didn't really know what I was doing. Chiaroscuro came to be known as tenebrism. He made the technique a dominant stylistic element, darkening shadows and transfixing subjects in bright shafts of light. Well, it's time to start my drawing. I'm planning on using my grid lines to help me with my drawing. I don't think Caravaggio used a pencil. He probably used a charcoal. I want to break this down into steps so it's easy to follow. Using the grids makes things so easy. I'm just looking at the distance between the grid lines and outline of the painting. there's a relationship between here and here. Okay, and then there's this little dip here. The distance from here to here versus this to this. Okay, so as you could see, all I have to do is go through the example photo and just draw my lines according to where they belong. So here's another one. I am done with my drawing, and now I would like to use Vine charcoal and kneaded eraser to go ahead and do the tonal part of this painting. So first, the tonal part is done with the charcoal, and then you would use fixative and apply the oil paint on top of that. So as you could see, I am actually extending on to the painting. So I have about half an inch here and half an inch there. So I'm just expanding that outward. I'm adding on. And then you can take your finger, I usually like to use my pinky and just kind of blend that in. Just like that. Okay, so now I made this darker, so I want to go and apply the dark tone here. And this is the hand. Okay, so you can take the kneaded eraser and just reshape that like that. This can be a little bit lighter. Okay, and this right here obviously is a little bit darker than this part of the cloth. Okay. Okay, so you have dark tones in here. I'm also using my grid, if you notice, to know where to shade up to. And take your finger. Sometimes if your finger, see it, if it's dirty, it's good because you're creating this softer, lighter shade of tone, which, by the way, you can come back and do this with the eraser. See, put some highlights in. And then with your finger just soften that. Okay. Alright, I think I'm almost done with this. Just go ahead and finish up some of the tones right here. There's a little separation. This is supposed to be a little thinner. So now that I have completed the charcoal part of this, what I need to do is use fixative and just spray the entire thing and come back and start the painting on top. After spraying the canvas with fixative, next thing to do is to scrub. Scrubbing means to dilute the paint with the Turpenoid to make it thin. The colors that I will be using for this tonal part would be burnt umber, black, ivory black, and titanium white. And then what you do is you take the canvas and just scrub it. So I'm going with burnt umber. Okay. So then what you do is take a paper towel and just rub it off like that. The next color obviously is going to be black. So I'm going to do the same thing. So take the black, mix it with Turpenoid, and just everything else would be with ivory black. What you can do also is to dip the paper towel in Turpenoid, and you want to sometimes create the highlights, so like right there. You want to create the light tones, so that's going to be a little bit lighter right here on the finger. Okay, this hand. There. Okay, I'm ready to paint. So I'm looking at the value. Now keep in mind that things need to be a little bit lighter than what they appear. So all the light areas, all the light tones in the painting need to be pretty much white so that I can go over it with a transparent color. Now, the only thing that I am introducing here that's really not traditional is a drying medium, and that is called Galkite. The reason for that is because I don't really have that much time to wait around for the painting to dry. I need things to dry really fast. So, but my medium is still oil. I plan on painting over this with actual color. So this is just the tonal part. There. Okay. Now what I'd like to do is start mixing the tone or the color on the canvas. For example, this needs to be a little bit lighter. And I am building up the paint, so I'm going a little thick on this. Here now, this area needs to be a little bit darker, but not as dark as it is in the painting. Still doing the tonal part and trying to put some subtle changes, but sometimes the subtle changes, like in the flesh color, like for example right there, you can do that when you're laying in the color. Okay, this is a little bit darker, so I'm just blocking that in. This is where the fingernail will be, and I don't really have to worry about that yet. So this is dark. Put this in. And same thing here. Now that I'm done with the tonal part of this painting, I want to switch over to color. And the colors that I am using are as follows: ultramarine blue, yellow ochre, cad yellow, alizarin red, cadmium red, and zinc white. Zinc white is a transparent white, and that will allow me to make my colors a little bit more transparent. Alright, as you notice, I'm just applying a thin layer of cad yellow with a little bit of yellow ochre, and also now that I want to warm up the color, I switch and I add a little bit of cadmium red for this section. I would also like to introduce a little bit of black so that my painting is softer. There, now sometimes what I can do is I can take the paper towel and just kind of wipe it away just to create that staining effect, see? Okay, so now let's switch over to the flesh color. It's quite warm, as you could see. Sometimes you can take your finger and just soften that out. Okay, this is supposed to be darker right there. Okay, and then it's okay if you go over the finger part right there. That's definitely okay. You're not getting rid of the drawing or the painting underneath, you're just applying to it. Let's just bring this down. Can take a larger brush and just soften what I have done. Okay, so if you notice the color is very thin, right? I'm not really using a lot of paint. I think Caravaggio used flake white, but in today's world, you know, that's more toxic. So I went with the next best thing, which is zinc white. Right here. Do you notice how much darker this area is now underneath the hand? And I used the same color as I did here, but it does look darker. That's because the tonal part is dark, and I'm keeping my colors transparent. So what happens is that the color that you have underneath, which is the black and white, seeps through. So there are parts of this hand, the top part of the hand, that need to be darker. Let's just bring that in as well, like that. Soften that. Now there's a hint of green that's coming through, so I took the ultramarine blue and see, that's going to gray that part down as well. sometimes if you take the white and just go over areas that you want to lighten, it'll just be amazing like this. Just putting the final layer. Now I don't need to use a lot of the liquid that will thin down the paint, and I'm just refining it. So I'm going a little opaque, not too much, just a little bit. Okay, so, and mostly creating some highlights. Create some highlights here. So I'm just taking it a little slower and really refining it, creating a lot of subtleties, as you could see. Mostly applying my lighter shades of color right now. And still trying to adjust the drawing a little bit. So after I clean my brush, I'm just going to take what I have and just soften the edges. Okay. And just drag that here. See? Very thin layer, and softening the edges, of course. It's a very important thing right now. So as you can see, I'm going over this area with black because I want this finger to be more pronounced. Okay, and at the same time, I'm refining this area. I'm just doing detail work. Reshaping this finger and adjusting my dark tones. Keep in mind that very thin layer. Okay. And keep the edges soft so it doesn't look like it's cut and paste. Okay, so as you can see, I've done a few more layers on this, and what I want to do now is adjust the tones. So I'll start with the chest, just thin layers there. Use your finger and just soften that a little bit if you want. Right here. Again. Soften that. Okay. Again, this. So if I had more time, I could perfect it to the best of my ability. But the point is that we now know how Caravaggio painted. He first sketched, he did a charcoal drawing, very thorough charcoal drawing, and then he did a tonal painting on top of that. And the very last layer of paint was what I just did, the coloration of the painting, and that's pretty much it. So till next time, happy painting.